This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 14. A lot to get into. Fantasy playoffs are just around the corner. We break it all down here. Let's start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 14. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig, and we have an awesome slate of games this weekend. Some real marquee matchups. We get Chiefs, Bills. We got Eagles, Cowboys. A handful of other interesting ones thrown into the mix. But we start out with a game that really might be the tipping point for Al Michaels as far as how much more he wants to do this, because tonight, on Thursday Night Football, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the New England Patriots. The over-under in this game, Mario, do you know what it is off the top of your head?
No, but I'm assuming it's, let's see. It has to be the lowest on the slate, and I saw another one of the games was 32.5, so 28.5.
The Mario Sportsbook is close to consensus, but not quite there. It is 30.5. But I still love the under.
A little optimistic, yeah.
Like
John, did you have you seen Bailey Zappi play? Like throwing footballs? I mean,
unfortunately, yes. And what bums me out is I loved him in college. Like he was
really
so
good college
sick.
quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I just like when Western Kentucky's good. There's something fun about that program and their amorphous red blob mascot and their offense. Zappi to I think beat Joe Burrow's all-time like passing touchdown record for a single season was wild. But as far as his transition over to the NFL, we saw a bit last year. I think we got a pretty good glimpse of it. And obviously this past weekend against the Chargers, you make the quarterback change and it results in getting shut out, and yet you ride with him again. So that's what we're looking at here when it comes to the Patriots.
Yeah, I kind of get going with him just because he is at this point a human shield for Mac Jones, who's not exactly a treasured asset for the Patriots, but they can only make him less valuable by putting him out there, just kind of keep getting more psychologically damaged. And that's basically what this offense subjects a quarterback to, even when they're playing against teams that don't have TJ Watt and Highsmith and Hayward and whatever else. So this could honestly, John, the biggest threat to the over in this game is probably the Steelers defense and the number of turnovers they can create, which could be, unless the Patriots run that one pass attempt offense that they ran against Buffalo last year, they might turn the ball over like 7 or 8 times in this game. Like they can't throw the ball. That has to be the step one of this offense. Like, we're not going to try to throw the ball ever. And if you deviate from that, I think it just turns into just a total nightmare for them.
Yeah, there's pretty much no other way to put it. That the Patriots just need to protect themselves and run the ball and hope that they can kind of win the position or field position battle, and also hope for a couple arm punts for Mitchell Trubisky on the other side. So that's certainly in play as well. I saw an interesting stat, or I was just kind of compiling some numbers earlier this week, and the Patriots, they've lost 3 straight. Probably more than that, actually, but in that span, they've allowed 26 points. Pretty good. They have scored 13 points.
Yeah, the whole thing with this team is as bad as they are. It really is mostly due to injuries, and to a lesser extent, they screwed up their wide receiver personnel. They should have signed anybody other than Juju Smith-Schuster, somebody with 2 functioning knees. But even with all the things they did wrong on offense and all the things that went wrong with the offense, that defense even now is good enough to keep them, at least, against lesser teams, against lesser offenses, that can keep them competitive. And if they had everybody healthy, and if the offense had just been, merely the 25th best in the league, they would have had a competitive team because of how good that defense could have been. Like, you're seeing a defense right now that gets at least decent results, and yet something like their three best players are just not on the field. I guess Duggar's on the field, but in any case, it's brutal what that team has been subjected to, and it's as bad of a job as Belichick has done. It still is a case where it's like, man, this team has incredibly bad luck this year.
Yeah, it definitely does. When we were talking preseason, you were tossing it out there that this could be a special defense for New England, and obviously with Judon and Christian Gonzalez going out, like that changes things. But the defense still, by and large, it has been a strong, solid one for fantasy purposes. And I think tonight is another good spot for them. But now we're getting into team defense, so. Before we move on to the Steelers side of this equation this evening, obviously with Ramondre Stevenson being out with that high ankle injury, what do you expect from Ezekiel Elliott? Do you think he's someone that you would feel comfortable starting if you had to this weekend?
It's not the ideal situation. It would have been nice if this was a non-Bailey Zappi offense, and if ideally, if facing a defense that isn't quite as explosive as the Steelers, but just insofar as he's a starting running back and on a team with no obvious competition for him, like Ty Montgomery and JaMychal Hasty, at least it shows that the Patriots were assuming that they're going to play catching up, and that was probably the right calculation. But like those guys can't take carries, so the Patriots can't throw the ball. Montgomery and Hasty can't take carries. Even if the Steelers kind of just blast the Patriots into outer space in this one, I still think Elliott gets to 15 carries. Like he would have to get hurt to not get 15 carries in this game.
Yeah, I think the volume's going to be there. His posted prop at most places is 60 yards, so that's usually a good kind of like jumping off point for what to reasonably expect from his production this evening. I think he can get you that, maybe a couple of dump off passes type of thing. So yeah. I think he's like fringe startable, but you definitely don't feel great about the ceiling. We do have an interesting stat in the chat from our guy, the Hairy Snowman.
Oh, wow.
The last time a team, this is in regards to the Patriots, has allowed 10 points or less in 3 games and lost all 3 games was 1938. The Patriots have scored 8 or less points 5 times this year. That equals the number, or that same number, in Tom Brady's 283 career starts for the New England Patriots. And I, to make this a JFK,
those are amazing,
Lincoln, these are so good. The Abe Lincoln, JFK parallels, 283 starts for Tom Brady, 28-3. Does that ring a bell? Perhaps the Super Bowl against the Falcons. Yeah,
it adds up all again.
My tinfoil hat is at the dry cleaner right now, but I love that.
That's dangerous. I don't know about that. But yeah, thank you for those stats. That was crazy. I had not heard those, and those are like finding those crazy stats takes some querying.
Yes, queries that I'm simply incapable of coming up with. But on the other side of this one, obviously Kenny Pickett has the tightrope surgery on his ankle, so he's going to be out for at least this game. That means it's a Mitchell Trubisky night. Najee Harris, I think, is in line to play. Last I saw, so that means that him and Jaylen Warren should split the carries to an extent there. We'll see if Najee's less than 100% enough to where Jaylen Warren kind of starts to become the RB1 for at least tonight. But your expectations on this Pittsburgh offense led by Trubisky?
Well, no practice this week for Harris. I could see it being, he misses the game, or at very least is not getting nearly the workload he usually does. So it'll be interesting to see what Jaylen Warren does with an extended workload. He could do it for sure. It's just like, what will he look like doing it? Because he's gotten into this role with the Steelers where he's basically a drawback and off the bench kind of guy. And there's a big difference between playing that role and playing the role that Najee Harris had. So if Harris being injured, limited or out, puts Warren into this workhorse role, he might, in my opinion, all of a sudden start looking like, probably not in one game, but certainly if he had to do it for more than a few weeks at a time, I think you'd start to see him settle in more like he did in college at Utah State and Oklahoma State. And John, you should always be very suspicious when a running back prospect averages more yards per carry in the NFL than they do in college. Jaylen Warren is one of those to an extreme degree. He's at like a yard over his yards per carry in college. And it's not as if he was on like a doomed series of offenses when he was playing in college. You know, the difference was he was in a workhorse role in those teams, and he probably was not running at that 125% motor every play like he does now. So I'm not saying expect like a Tony Pollard level drop off in efficiency, but that is the basic dynamic that we're dealing with here. He's going to get more work than he's been accustomed to in the past couple of years, and he's going to be getting carries on types of plays that he didn't always get before, like low expectation carries. So I think he can handle the volume, but I don't think this 5 yards of carry stuff is going to happen at least not in this particular game.
Yeah, not tonight. And then I know some people are on the fence with whether they should start their Steelers receivers. So when it comes to Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, how are we feeling?
The target volume has to be okay, especially in the case of Johnson, but I do worry that the targets are incredibly low value and off target, low depth, that kind of stuff. But this, I don't know. I feel like it's totally justifiable to start either one because, in my opinion anyway, the Steelers should kind of eventually take control of this game. And while yardage and good throws and extended drives are not likely to be conducted by Mitch Trubisky, a short field is the kind of thing that even the worst offenses can sometimes take advantage of a little bit. And I think at least by the second half, the Steelers should be holding on to the ball past the 50 a good amount. And I wouldn't be shocked if, maybe it takes 12 targets and a corner slipping down. But, if Deontay Johnson got a touchdown opportunity, I wouldn't be terribly surprised just because I feel like the Steelers are going to be within range at some point. And, there's only so many candidates in the offense.
Yeah, there really are. So I think you just kind of have to hold your nose and hope that of the 1 or 2 touchdowns that get scored this evening comes through the air, and that'll kind of be that. Let's go ahead and move on over to Sunday's slate. But before then, we got a message from our friends over at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun, daybeds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more, or touchdown at the world's largest sports book, Circa Sports, for the big game bash. Can confirm, very big sports book. I've been there. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bars, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th, the big game parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. All right, Mario, we are on to Sunday. Let's start here in my backyard. We got the Falcons playing host to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've got the Falcons set as 1-point favorites in this one. It's so hard to know what to do with any, other than the Panthers, the NFC South is impossible to figure out, basically. You never know which iteration of the Saints you're going to get. The Falcons, same deal. Maybe the Falcons are the most stable of that bunch, and that's why they're the favorites to win the South. And then the Bucs, they have the proclivity to do some crazy stuff on the other weeks and then just kind of get boat raced in another. They held on to beat the Panthers last week, but they didn't cover. I was upset about that. What do we see here with this game taking place in Atlanta?
It's tough for me because one thing, I can't get the Atlanta injury report to load, but the Buccaneers have been a bit beat up on defense, and they appear to still be. And I think Vita Vea might be a new part of that injury. Like Jamel Dean's been out for like a month or whatever, and Levante David's been playing hurt or maybe missing time. I can't remember. So there's a bit going on. Carlton Davis had been playing hurt. Sometimes guys kind of just keep playing with the injury even when they get taken off the report. So all of that occurring and all of the bad results the Buccaneers defense has gotten lately, I can't tell how much of the like prior assumptions about that defense hold at this point, at this particular time in the year. Like this could basically be a bad Buccaneers defense, even if only for injury reasons. And if they're bad, maybe Desmond Ridder can't really screw up as much as usual. I don't know. I guess it's not the easiest either to think through the Tampa offense because they're just so inherently kind of sketchy, hit or miss at best. It's not so much that I worry about AJ Terrell being a major impediment to Mike Evans. It's more like at this point, I'm worried that Baker Mayfield can't really get the ball to anybody else. And when you're that sort of offense, like you better be really good at that one thing that you do. You better have, and more ideally yet, you would have a more consistent run game that you can leverage the play action off of to get that one target going. But so often it seems like the Buccaneers offense is just kind of Mike Evans, and when he's rolling, they got a shot. But if he isn't carrying them, and if the Rachaad White screen passes aren't carrying them into scoring range, like I worry that they could do surprisingly badly even against defenses worse than this. But just the same, yeah, the Falcons are so stupid and bad. It's like, how can we give them any benefit of the doubt toward anything in particular? I don't know. It's like this. I guess this could be one of those games where it's like the team that wants to lose it more does, and I don't know, but with either organization you could imagine a lot of fatigue with the players and like there's just disheartening circumstances with each team. I don't know. It's I guess I'll pick the Buccaneers just because I think Mayfield's better than Ridder.
Yeah,
but it's like I can't. When I say that out loud, it's like, does that really matter? I don't know.
Yeah, Mayfield, he's a cagey one, if nothing else. But to your point on the injury front for Tampa Bay, it's not. I mean, these guys should end up playing. They're all listed as questionable, but it's still not great to have them on the injury report. You got 3/5 of the starting offensive line, including Tristan Wirfs, being listed as questionable or being on the injury report this week. Vita Vea, to your point, questionable as well. Devin White even on the injury report. Jamel Dean on the injury report. So that's a lot of key players that are, even if they're out there, are going to be less than 100%. So I do kind of like the Falcons at home in this spot, but I think that this is a game that probably comes down to the wire. Like that, it's decided late in this game. I don't think that either team has the firepower to like really pull away necessarily.
Yeah, neither of these teams can play mistake-free either, so it's just, I don't know, kind of unstable. It's just it's not explosive. It's unstable. It can like implode on itself so many different directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be a game that I hope I don't have to see too much of. Let's move on to Charm City. We've got the Ravens playing host to the Rams. Ravens 7-point favorites in this one. I'm not so sure the line should be that high, but then again, it's been proven time and again that the Ravens are quite good under Lamar Jackson against NFC opponents. They're quite good at home as well. They're Ravens off the bye. The Rams are not, so there's a rest advantage there. I think Marlon Humphrey's going to be back in action for Baltimore. It is supposed to be rainy but warm on Sunday in Baltimore. But your thoughts here when it comes to the 7-point spread and how we can see this game unfold.
I guess we got to keep an eye on the injury to Byron Young. Like if he's out, then the Rams pass rush is just Aaron Donald, which is not something you just assume will go well exactly, but it's a little easier when you literally have to worry about no one else at all. So that's reassuring for the Ravens. Basically, I'm not seeing as much cause for concern on their side, especially since Madubuike is listed as a limited practice. He's not cleared, but a lot of these times when the guy is practicing all week, they got a shot. And whereas if he hadn't a practice yesterday, I would have been like, probably not going to play him. But they probably don't need him either. I mean, the Rams are so weird to me. on both sides of the ball, but lately the offense has become more strange to me. I just don't understand how it all works, to be quite frank. Like I when I talk about some of these other Shanahan school coaches, I feel like I can understand them a little bit better, but McVay is just so confusing to me, and I can't ever get a beat on what it is that he's doing, or when it works, why it does, really. Like, it's just I can't figure him out. So I don't want to assume anything in particular about the Rams offense, but they've struggled enough this year, and I feel like their personnel is sketchy at enough key points that, at least in this setting in Baltimore, I'm not going to err on the side of optimism. I think again, like, Stafford has even when he's played well this year, he's had so much just grinding through it to do, and as great as the production is, especially for Nakua, I just it's hard for me to see it as especially sustainable, or even if it is, it's like I question whether the offense as a sum is producing enough. And one thing I definitely am willing to fade is the idea that Kyron Williams is like an offensive centerpiece running back. They've been putting a lot on him. He's gotten good results, but in this matchup, I think the lack of talent will be glaring. I don't think he gets an inch, really. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like he goes into the second half with 4 carries or something like that, because McVay tends to not run the ball unless it's just the defense daring them to do it, and the Ravens will never, even if the Ravens are kind of daring you to run the ball, I don't think the Rams can get good enough results doing it to have the incentive to stick with it. So I'm not easily imagining where the production comes from for the Rams. It's like, I can imagine it just being a lot of targets for Nakua and Kupp, and maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. Whatever is there, I can't see keeping up with the sum of the Ravens offense on the other side. And that it's in Baltimore, I think that makes it, not for like travel reasons, it's just it's more like the Ravens are just kind of tougher there, and the ball bounces their way a little more often.
That's true. I go back and forth on how I view this game. I think it's either the Rams keep it close or the Ravens kind of boat race them.
Yeah.
Sort of similar to, the Rams game in Dallas. Obviously, Stafford banged up his thumb in that one, but it could...
Lamar, his MVP season, didn't he have one of his insane? He had like 4 first half touchdowns against the Rams or something.
Oh my God, that Monday night game, and I think Marcus Peters had a pick 6. I mean, that was the most fun I've ever had watching a regular season game. I think that was, on national TV.
Not even Jamal Lewis, 295 or whatever.
That's true. That
was history at the time.
We know it in RotoWire podcast lore that young Johnny was in attendance for that game. That was, oh man, that was amazing. But the 2019 season was like a fever dream. But
yeah.
But beyond that, we got a glimpse of what the offense looks like post Mark Andrews against the Chargers a couple weeks ago. Did you have any big takeaways from that as it comes to, guys like Zay Flowers, Odell, and Isaiah Likely?
Well, Likely did a good job. The routes looked a little different to me, or at least the catches looked a little different to me than the kind of stuff Andrews does, which makes sense because they're very different trait-wise. Like, Andrews perfectly built to do just seam stretching post routes all day. Whereas Likely doesn't really have the reach, the mass, or the speed to threaten those parts of the field the same way. It would make sense that they'd be hitting him more on like crossing routes and out routes, things that are a little more horizontally oriented. So it's good that he, is effective in that capacity. But anytime you're rearranging an offense this way, and especially when you're sort of rechanneling such important production as Andrews, and again, in that particular part of the field, the seam threat, I worry about the effect of maybe forfeiting that threat in the long term. And because basically it's like, if you have Likely running routes or threatening on routes that Andrews, did not, and Likely not threatening Andrews, the routes that Andrews did, the defense is going to start rolling kind of toward those parts of the field that Likely tends to get as targets. And I worry that that's too close or less than ideal, proximate to the part of the field that Flowers runs in, which is to say just kind of like underneath horizontally. And I know that Flowers has speed. The defense has to respect the speed with Flowers at least. Like they're not gonna totally sell out crashing underneath on Flowers because Flowers can run a double move, or even if you're just playing dishonest crashing downward coverage against him, he can beat you downfield that way. But for base structure purposes, it's like I don't think Flowers is a downfield threat on any given play as much as Andrews was. So it all falls again to the question of, can Odell Beckham be this downfield threat, this threat that basically either keeps a safety back a little bit or splits the safeties if they get creeping too close to the line of scrimmage. And Beckham has shown that ability when he's on the field. It's just they still are rotating him out. I can't tell if that's just a very specific, like, disciplined strategy of theirs. Like, we're going to pull him every, however many reps, or keep him limited specifically so that we know that he is always available for when we need him in, crucial situations later in the year. If that's what they're doing, then, hard to argue with it. I don't know how to make those kinds of decisions. I don't know what would go into them. But if Beckham is not presenting that threat, I think they point blank don't have it. And I'm worried, Keaton Mitchell being on the field more, that's good as far as this goes. Like his speed threat is so profound that it has a vertical effect even from the backfield. But that's not where you want your starting point of vertical threat to be. You want it to be on the boundary, and you want it to be credible. And I just don't see it. So if defenses cheat basically and crash downward, kind of like, the way you play the Chargers offense, like what are they going to do if you don't cover anybody downfield? They can't do anything anyway. So Lamar can make big plays from that sort of look if the defense turns and runs. But I worried that you're begging the defense to just sit back, keep their eyes forward, keep the receivers in front of them. And that hurts Lamar as a runner because he really kills a defense when they go to man coverage and when they turn their backs to run downfield.
Right. So I don't know. I wonder if this is going to be a lower passing volume game for Lamar, like something like 25, 27 type of attempts, and they just kind of try to bludgeon with the run game. Although, when you're facing Aaron Donald, not that you feel great about doing anything, but let alone running right at him. But I could see this being a pretty active game for Edwards and for Keaton.
Yeah, and I don't understand that usage exactly. I don't understand why they didn't give Gus Edwards more work last week, but maybe that too was like a workload thing, and maybe they're willing to ride him a little bit more, like whatever the month and a half preceding last week. But maybe just the same. They're doing something like the Odell management, where if they basically think they can get away with it, they'll keep him on the bench or something.
Yeah, Monken just, I think with Odell, it's a maintenance thing, but I think Monken has not gotten stellar grades from me for his play calling and personnel choices over the last month or so. I got way too cute in the Cleveland game, and he was not great against the Chargers.
For what it's worth, if they were taking that approach with Edwards, I think that would make sense. There'd be totally good basis for it because he has a surprisingly long list of injuries, like a lot of missed games in his career. But the Justice Hill thing basically needs to stop. Like their offense is not good enough to be putting reps like that on the field. Like you better be rolling like the Eagles. You better have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith on the field making up for your Kenny Gainwell snaps, or else you're just giving the ball to Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah, and which we'll get to that a little bit more later. But I think we've sufficiently covered this game in Baltimore. Let's head on over to Chicago. We've got the Lions and the Bears squaring off for the second time in just a few weeks. We got the Bears 3.5-point underdogs at home. The Lions, they got off to an absolutely torrid start in the Dome last week against the Saints, and then the Saints really crept back into that game, and it was close at the end, like right on the spread number 4.5. Like the Lions ended up winning by 5, but not convincing, especially in the second half. And I think the defensive concerns there are significant and justified. And I think with the Bears coming off the bye and looking all right under Justin Fields before that bye and getting his thumb a little bit more time to get closer to 100%, I kind of like the Bears in this spot.
That's fair. I have had a weird relationship with the Lions this year, obviously. Like back when they were getting pushed as like a top 3 team in the first month and a half, I was kind of like, no, damn you all, they're not that good. And now I think it's kind of gone the other way a little bit too much. Like I don't know if that's just Lions fans mostly like riding that high, and now they're getting like the hangover and like the despair of being like, where did our season go or whatever. But it's like this is why I don't know. A fan base is what ideally go through a lot of the ups and downs, so that they don't need to be so shocked each time that happens again in the future. You know, it's like you gotta have some perspective here. The Lions were always going to regress on defense because their personnel was always kind of crap, and more importantly, their schedule was crap. Like outside of the Kelsey-less Chiefs, which as we're continuing to see, that's almost saying nothing at all. Sorry, not it's saying that the offense is almost nothing at that point.
Right.
Like aside from games like that, that you could see, it was just like they're not really doing anything good on defense, and those corners especially is like those guys are going to start getting beat. You can actually guarantee anybody like those corners are going to start getting beat, even if they weren't facing receivers like Chris Olave and whatever the Packers guys who are quite good. So it's a problem that we always could know was going to occur. The one thing I'm a little disappointed with, even as someone who's kind of like a former critic of Hutchinson, is like Hutchinson's gone a little slow, a little cold, and that pass rush has almost nothing going for it when he's not going. So when you got bad corner personnel and then no pass rush, it's just a really bad setup for a defense. And the Lions offense can't just kind of create explosiveness on demand enough to keep them fully protected from rallies like the ones the Saints made. However, I don't think that game was all that close. I think the Lions offense is pretty much locked in, and because I always thought the defense was kind of not that great, I'm not so deterred by the observation that the defense is not doing that great lately. So a little bit worried about Goof going outside, and Chicago just kind of has a way of bringing teams down sometimes. But
famously in his Super Bowl season with the Rams, like that Sunday night game in Chicago, where the Bears just absolutely punished the Rams. I mean, I don't think it's going to go like this, but
I forgot about that, but that's a good call. The more time goes on, the more I believe in stuff like that. Like I believe something now that you reminded me of that, I am convinced of something like Jared Goff is afraid of, I don't know,
the bean.
He's afraid of the Beloit, Illinois line, and something about once he gets that far south, he's like, I'm a shell of a man. I'm a fraud.
This is not for me.
However, the rest of this is the case every week, John. He is always the fraud. It is always the rest of the team lifting him up, and the rest of the team is playing in this game. So I do worry a little bit more than I usually do about their offense, but this is still fundamentally, I think this is still an offense that dictates almost every game because of the offensive line alone. And when you have an offensive line that can dictate the entire course of the game, you tend to not end up in the situations that are the most harrowing. Like that's for the Bears. They get to end up in all the really good luck, you're on your own situations. Like that's for the Bears to end up with, even at home, I think. So like the venue can bring down the Lions. I just don't think it can lift up the Bears, and I don't think it brings down the Lions enough to make more than like a 3 out of 10 kind of proposition for the Bears winning. Part of it too is this is the kind of game, the kind of situation where the Dan Campbell culture should pay off. You worry about dome teams going outside in the cold, being soft for it. I can't really see the Lions losing for that reason. It would have to be like the Bears are just doing a good job. And when does that happen?
Right. That's definitely fair. One observation that I had on the Bears before their bye week, so they played that Monday night game against the Vikings, right? And that was Fields' first or second game back from the thumb injury. And everyone on Twitter was pointing it out. And if you watched the game, you obviously saw it too. But they were so reliant on screens. It was almost like they weren't confident in Justin Fields, like having to take a drop back and deliver a ball down the field. But at the end of the game, he made an unbelievable throw to DJ Moore down the field over the middle to kind of seal it, set them up for that game-winning field goal. And it just, I mean, you can always say that the Bears coaching is bad, but I mean, to just be that worried about Fields when clearly they shouldn't have been.
I think that's generous to think that they were worried about Fields. I think they just that sounds to me like the same offense they ran in week 1, Like this is a recurring issue with Getsy, and I'm sorry, every comment from not just Getsy but also Eberflus that I see from those guys, to me it reeks of a culture of just scoundrels. Like they just never take the guilt for any. Dan Campbell is such a stark contrast to this. Like there was that I guess it must have been the Packers game or whatever, and the press was just like, so what happened on that play or whatever? Dan Campbell immediately just goes like, it's my fault, I screwed up. And has Matt Eberflus said that one time? Has Luke Getsy acknowledged that one time? What you will
despite having infinitely more screw ups than Dan Campbell.
Yeah, no results in a positive sense to show, but what you will find, especially from Getsy, is dozens and dozens of comments defending himself from the press saying, no, that was the right call, we just didn't execute. Those screen passes that you're talking about, he thinks they were all awesome. He thinks that the players screwed up. So, eventually he was forced to call a different kind of play in that game, and that play worked almost immediately, but it's not his inclination. It's he for some reason won't call a real offense with Fields. And, I don't know why, but I will tell you this: like, no one's going to bat for Luke Getsy after this year. That guy's going to get run out of Chicago, and no one's ever going to go to bat for him because he's like a Matt Canada case where he's going to be burning bridges everywhere he goes. But unlike Matt Canada, he's not going to keep getting jobs in the future.
No, this has been bad enough to where it's hard to envision him getting another coordinator job, at least anytime soon. And then last thing here. Was there anything instructive from the first meeting between these two teams that might apply this time around?
Just that I think the Detroit pass defense is point blank vulnerable. Like they, with any defensive secondary, you could say like they get worse when they can't keep the ball in front of them. When they have to turn and run, they lose something. But it's with the Lions, it's more like they just can't play that game downfield. If you make Jerry Jacobs turn around and run, he can't do it. Although it's not just that, it's that they're good underneath. Like if you're attacking underneath, you're playing specifically to Jerry Jacobs' strengths. He goes from a struggling player downfield to a notably useful one underneath. And if Getsy keeps doing this crap where he calls all these screens, that's going to make Jerry Jacobs look like and Brian Branch look like I don't know, Ronnie Lott or something. And that's embarrassing for an offense at the one hand, but it's also really easy to imagine happening with Getsy. The guy constantly just embarrasses himself. So I do think there's kind of easy big plays to be had with both DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney. But if they're going to do this thing where they a third of their passes are screens, then they will find a way to make the passing game ineffective, even though there's a lot of big plays on the field. So yeah, as you can tell, it's difficult for me to imagine optimistic scenarios for the Bears. I can only imagine failures by the Lions, and that's not really my first, expectation for a team like them.
Sure. I struggle with the Lions too. I mean, like you said at the start of this breakdown, like it's been so all over the map. Like it was a little bit too crazy in the positive sense early on. It's probably gotten a little bit too negative.
We're like 3 weeks removed from PFF saying Jared Goff's the number 1 graded quarterback in the league. It's like,
yeah, like you always say, man, like we've got goldfish brains. We do. But Chicago just frustrates me because you have a game like the one against Washington, and obviously Washington has probably the worst secondary.
That was just Jack Del Rio out dueling Luke Getsy. Oh my god!
It's just like, why not? Even if it's not going to be as easy against literally anyone else, why not test that theory again? Like why not just try going downfield with DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney a little bit more? Get Cole Kmet involved down the seam. Like it doesn't feel like rocket surgery to me, and yet for one Getsy. It certainly is. and then some. And he doesn't have the Joshua Dobbs educational background to perform any sort of rocket
or Matt
surgery.
Patricia even.
That's right. And he doesn't even have a pencil in his ear. So he's getting it all wrong. Let's keep rolling here. Before that, we got a message from our friends over at Splash Sports. RotoWire is proud to partner with Splash Sports on the 2023 fantasy football season. Splash Sports empowers gaming commissioners to earn by creating contests. Commissioners can set up contests, add their style, and enjoy the evolving Splash Sports platform for customized preferences. From daily to season-long contests, Splash Sports caters to various playing styles such as DFS, Pick X, and traditional Survivor. And unlike traditional sports books, Splash Sports pits you against your friends and family, not the house. Splash goes beyond betting, a space where friends can connect, strategize, and share in the excitement of sports. RotoWire will be running weekly DFS tiers contests on Splash Sports all season. Can you beat the RotoWire experts? Visit rotowire.com/splash to enter today. I'm going to be doing a college football bowl season pick'em league over on Splash, or one of their affiliate sites. I tweeted out the info for that. So if you're interested in playing some college football bowl season confidence pool, check that out. Yeah, so it's on my Twitter feed, and I haven't tweeted much this week, so it should be close to the top of the old timeline. And then we've got a message from our friends at Blue Wire. All right, on to Cincinnati. This game is fascinating. I keep doubting Indianapolis, and they keep winning. And then the Bengals, I mean, everyone thought, and probably justifiably so, thought that they were deader than dead after Joe Burrow went out. But Jake Browning just had a Matt Flynn moment, basically, on Monday Night Football. Obviously, we're not expecting that to carry over once again, although Indianapolis's defense is not good. I mean, they allowed over 20 points to the Titans this past
at
week.
A corner, especially. And it's like, good for Jake Browning. I certainly didn't expect it to go that well, but I think you can at once give him credit for doing a great job as a backup quarterback, and also acknowledge it's probably true that the Jags defense wasn't quite on its game. And just as importantly, the reason Browning did such a great job is that he let those receivers carry him, obviously Chase primarily. But if it is these receivers that primarily lift his production, then this should be a totally good setup for Browning, because the Colts can't cover anybody, even, much lesser receivers than these. So you could, if Brandon Allen were playing quarterback in this game, I'd still expect a good game from the Bengals offense. And so Browning's probably quite a bit better than that, or, some amount better than that.
No, I think so too. Browning is such a fascinating character. He lives in a certain lore for me, because the greatest call of my life was 2016, and I was like, I think Washington's going to make the playoffs this year, and they did. They got smoked once they got there, but hey, they made the playoffs, so that still paid off.
Hell
but
yeah.
He threw 43 touchdowns that year, never eclipsed 20.
He was a
any of his
4-year
other
starter
things.
too.
He was. That was part of the reason why. He was he was going into his sophomore year. Gaskin was going into.
He was
his
a high
recruit.
Year. His trajectory wasn't that different from Matt Barkley or somebody like that.
See, exactly. And then he sort of Brock Purdy'd, I guess. Purdy at one point in his Iowa State career was this guy might be a first round pick, and then regressed his final two seasons. So
he almost what was that? I already forgot this guy's name. Who's that USC Keaton Slovis? He was an early Keaton Slovis or something.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, he was a huge deal coming in for JT Daniels, and then had that great first season, and then I think he's kicking around at BYU.
He was exiled. Yeah, they're like, you have to leave the country.
They thought that he was just going to be the next Kenny Pickett when he transferred to Pitt, and that just simply was not the case. But beyond that, obviously we're going to start Jamar Chase no matter what. We started him last week. You have to feel a little bit better about Joe Mixon now after last week, because I thought he looked pretty good. And I thought, that Steelers game where he had all the carries but none of the yards, I thought that was going to be more informative as to his outlook going forward. And I thought against the Jaguars defense has been good against the run. I thought that was a brutal spot.
Didn't it look like they kind of no-showed? I mean, Mixon has always been a pretty athletic guy, and I know that when he gets room. He can look good, make good plays like he did in that game. But that was the most shocking thing of that game to me, I think, was that the Jags run defense, I guess they got it together later because I'm 68 yards on 19 carries isn't that great. I know he started with much better efficiency than that, but I guess for like at least a quarter or two there, the Jags kind of were, I doubt it was intentional. I doubt they were cutting him loose to focus on the receivers, but they just kind of screwed up. But yeah, if Mixon has room, he can be he can be pretty good. I really do suspect that some of his athleticism is not quite as specifically functional athleticism as we would like. Like I think it's he's I don't know how to say this. Like he's athletic in probably some other sport just as much as football. Like it's like some of the movements of being a running back is like his athleticism doesn't directly channel there, and you end up with this guy who can do like athletic feats, but just kind of struggles to get out of the backfield more than makes sense. But when you get him in past that line of scrimmage, like you can see him quickly change from like sluggish to rapidly picking up speed. And I guess the key is like getting him past that initial point. And his whole career, I've never understood why it's been so difficult, but it's also been one of those things like it's been long enough now that I no longer can assume like, oh, he'll get going eventually, you know?
No, for sure. And then what did you think of Chase Brown? He cropped up on the injury report earlier this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Yeah, it's frustrating that he just wasn't given a chance before. Now, is this really such a shocking outcome, John, that after the Bengals went with Travian Williams and Chris Evans ahead of him, that those two didn't quite cut it, so now they're giving Chase Brown a look? Why did you need it to go that way, Cincinnati? Why didn't you just know, obviously Chase Brown's going to be our best running back in October, backup running back in October? Why not just get him ready for that now? Why are we doing this thing where it's like, well, for reasons basically like just having practiced more, Travian Williams and Chris Evans having probably better looking reps in practice. It's like, that's just them knowing the playbook and stuff like that. That's an advantage that even if they have it, it'll lessen with each week. So why not just hasten the development of the guy who is going to lap them in the near future anyway? And it's so hard to get teams to see it that way. Every single team is like this. It's not even like the Bengals are the only ones doing it, but it's like just a simple case of putting a lesser talent on the field because they know the practice content material more. But games are not practice. In games you need talent. In games you don't get points for like knowing your assignment. You get points for making the play, and you don't make the play by knowing a playbook. Otherwise we just have a bunch of nerds on the field, and we don't. We have athletes on the field, and Chase Brown is an athlete. Travian Williams is not. Chris Evans is an athlete, but for some reason can't run with
bad
a
at football.
Yeah. So Chase Brown can run with the ball.
10% of my best ball teams agree with you. I went ahead and looked at my exposure on Monday night because I was like, I know I drafted a lot of him, and I wonder how dead those teams are and whether he can actually help me here down the stretch, because I loved Chase Brown in college. I thought that he was a total workhorse. I think he's athletic, and it was, why I drafted him in best ball was a hedge that, yeah, he is going to be better than Evans and Travian Williams. And I'm not even convinced, or at least at the time, that, Mixon was going to be full go for the entire season. And I think that it was pragmatic of the Bengals on Monday night to kind of mix and match and not just only have Joe Mixon out there and have Chase Brown be out there when he's, you're just able to get like the full 100%, type of burst out of him. You don't need to like use him for an entire offensive drive, but just get him out there
as a big play specialist, he makes perfectly good sense. Like, he's got the athleticism point blank. He can catch passes. We know he can play hurry up style football. And then, John, you're talking about the Jaylen Warren thing where he went from being a workhorse in college to an off the bench guy in the NFL, and how being the second role allowed him to play produce more explosively than he did in college in the workhorse role. Chase Brown should kind of gain like a little bit in his burst playing off the bench. Like, even if they're keeping Mixon as the clear workhorse, 3-down guy, like Chase Brown is uniquely well suited to draw back stuff, even though he was a workhorse at Illinois.
Yeah. So that's a good point and a good kind of parallel comparison to Warren, because Chase Chase Brown was the Illinois offense,
Yeah.
despite of course, Tommy DeVito being there at the same time, but it was Chase Brown. That's what got Illinois as to the level that it got to in 2022. Beyond that, looking at the other side of this game, how are things shaping up for Indianapolis? I mean, obviously Alec Pierce had the nice game last week, but probably not expecting that again going forward. And then, what do you think of Zach Moss against, what's been a pretty dodgy Bengals run defense?
Yeah, I have been surprised how bad the Bengals defense has been this year. And even now, I can't really get a good sense of what changed because the personnel didn't change that much, but the results got worse. And I'm kind of just at a loss as to theories what went wrong. When I feel that way, it's like I kind of have to worry about the prior assumptions coming back in. Like maybe they'll, for no particular reason, get a little better defending the run as the year goes along. If it's true that they were worse for no particular reason to begin the year, I don't know. But I'm not all that willing to give like a lot of credit for slowing the Jaguars offense. I think Press Taylor all year has been incredibly bad at designing the run game in addition to everything else, of course. But
Yep.
I think that the Bengals still have more to prove than they have like the benefit of the doubt as a run defense. And I don't think there's any sort of concern in Zach Moss only having 51 yards last week. I think that was unfortunately a pretty foreseeable thing because he was very fortunate in that first game against Tennessee. Tennessee never plays that badly for long as a run defense. So that was a buzzsaw matchup, even if it didn't quite look like it. This is far from a buzzsaw matchup for Moss. Like if Moss struggles here, I'll be pretty disappointed. Also, if Moss struggles here, that would be a really bad, initial sign for the Colts offense.
Yes, I think, they need to get him going. I think the setup is such that they will be able to get Moss going. If you're in trouble at quarterback, do you think Minshew's startable this week?
In a way, yeah. I've had trouble figuring out Minshew this year. I'd want to phone a coworker, Jim Coventry, to figure out this. He's been kind of like the low in our DFS segment. He always kills this part where he tries to pick a cheap quarterback, and so he's always like the weekly whisperer of like the Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew types.
What a talent! I love that.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to him, but I think it's fine. It's just that my reasoning isn't really based on anything specific. It's just the general thoughts of, I think Shane Steichen's really good, and these receivers, they're not awful, and how bad can it be? Stuff like that.
All right, here's a toss-up that kind of puts our feet to the fire here, and I think this is a really, really interesting one, actually, because I'm kind of mulling over this in a couple spots as well. I have Dobbs in a couple 2 QB leagues. Feeling on Dobbs or Minshew this week. We actually have them ranked right next to each other at QBs 13 and 14, respectively, with Dobbs being the higher ranked between the two. I was pretty concerned with how Dobbs looked against the Bears, but they do get the week off. They do get Justin Jefferson back, and they do get to play the Raiders. So that definitely, like, those are some positive tailwinds, I think, for Dobbs, but I am also concerned that Dobbs is someone that just can start hot, and then once teams get film, it goes away pretty quickly. I mean, he started out being very useful for fantasy early this season on the Cardinals, and then by the end of September, early October, it's like, oh boy, this is not great. When is Kyler coming back? And then he starts out great for the Vikings, very fun story, and I mean, I can't get that Monday night performance against the Bears out of my head.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at how badly that one went, and I was all year kind of skeptical of Dobbs and the way that it was being talked about of like, hey, why didn't all these teams trade for Josh Dobbs? Like, are we really doing this? Josh Dobbs, like, he's cool, but he's a lot more likable as a player than he is useful as a player, and he's a backup who gets traded 3 times every 12 months for a reason, and it's that he can't throw the ball other than maybe like 25 times a game or just weird circumstances. He can't throw the ball, and you need to run and probably just as likely you need to run effectively with Dobbs just to get him like the margin of error that he can actually operate within. And we saw in that Saints game, O'Connell, in my opinion, kind of just had the Dennis Allen, I guess it would have been. He had Dennis Allen in a sharpshooter. You could tell the Vikings play calling was just toying with the Saints defense in that game, and we should have considered like, well, what about when Kevin O'Connell is not just totally rocking the defense that he's going against? Like maybe he'll get a little bit more stymied against another defense, and maybe he won't have a counter adjustment to show. So I think what we saw was the result of what happens when a team schemes against the few things that was working against the Saints. And now we wait to see, can O'Connell figure out a counter move to these developments? And I think with the time off, I'm a little more optimistic for that. Like O'Connell's far from a finished perfect product, but I think he has shown moments of being kind of a above average play caller, of sort of like that LaFleur kind of tier. And that kind of tier of coaching can have, especially with the bye week, they can cook up some good novel tricks. Justin Jefferson coming back is maybe the bigger point, though. I think even as a Josh Dobbs skeptic, there's only so much you can screw up when you have Justin Jefferson at receiver, and you're gonna have Jordan Addison running against some bums now. Like there's gonna be guys open, and I think Dobbs would be much worse than I thought he was to blow it here. So I'd probably go with him.
Okay.
It's tough. I don't mean to make it sound simple. It's just and for what it's worth, Cam Taylor-Britt is out for at least a while for the Bengals, so that's a big thing for their pass defense. It's a reason to like Minshew more than usual. I just I don't know. I just think that Jefferson Addison is way too, and the bye week is way too much for the Raiders, but it's not something that I feel strongly about. Either way makes totally good sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's a level-headed look at Dobbs for this week, where things are working in his favor, but I have the looming suspicion that that game against the Bears at home was more of like a sign of things to come.
He is a backup for a reason. It's true. Yeah.
Let's get on over to another pretty interesting game here. Jags Browns. We've got the Browns 3-point favorites at home. The over-under in this one set at 30.5. So they're on the same block as Steelers Patriots. That feels a little bit low to me, even with the two backups going at it. But your initial thoughts on this game, and just keep it going for a second. I am dealing with a bit of a cold, so I will be right back. But please begin.
Feel better, John. Yeah, in the absence of John's moderation, I'm probably a major liability on this subject because, of course, I don't like all that much of what the Jaguars offense has been doing all year. I'm really high on players like Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, but two of those guys aren't playing in this game. Etienne, I think, is kind of nicked up at this point. I don't know if he's going to get better all year. And Calvin Ridley has already been neutralized in much more favorable circumstances than this, even with all those other players active. So it's hard for me to look at this Jags team going to Cleveland and
I'm back.
Assume, hey, John, John, you might be surprised to know I am not high on the Jacksonville offense for this game. And I think that Press Taylor with a quarterback like CJ Beathard, with Christian Kirk out, playing on the road against a defense like this, could really get out of hand. I think Jim Schwartz is like, to the extent that he can do cartwheels, he's doing them right now. And I don't know. I'm not expecting the Cleveland offense to get consistent traction against this Jags defense, which is probably going to bounce back. The Jags defense, even if they kind of blew it for 2 quarters or whatever against the Bengals, pretty much every defense in the league will go through something like that. At least that, and I guess most famously, John, that 2000 Ravens team, of course, giving up like 5 touchdowns to Tony Banks. The Jaguars in that game giving up 5 touchdowns.
I was at that game too.
Mark Brunell. John has been at all the Ravens games of importance, and that's right. Yeah, that was another memorable one. But yeah, so it doesn't mean that the Jags defense sucks now. It almost certainly does not. I guess we got to see if Trey Herndon, is he out again? Yeah, so that was one loss that might have made a difference, especially in their like slot defense, that run defense and stuff like that might have lost something with Herndon being gone. So if he's back, he wasn't practicing as of yesterday with a concussion. That would help the Jags defense and hurt the Browns offense. But the way I see it in the end is that these are two tough defenses, but the offense that has CJ Beathard at quarterback is in more Sherwood Taylor calling the plays with the CJ Beathard at quarterback is in more trouble than the one that has Joe Flacco, even in 2023. So we'd have to be talking at least like 2025, I guess, before I'd change my stance on that.
I love seeing Joe out there. I really do. But beyond that, when it comes to the Jags, what did you make of Evan Ingram's huge game on Monday, and then also, with Christian Kirk being out and Zay Jones being dinged up in his own right? I mean, that Parker Washington performance came out of nowhere. I always thought he was a solid player at Penn State. I wish he landed somewhere where he would have had a chance to get on the field a little bit sooner, but I thought he looked good. I thought he looked totally credible out there.
Yeah, Parker Washington was one of those guys who, going into the combine, I was prepared to rank as high as the second round or something, pending athletic testing. And he was not expected to do that well on that testing. Like, he didn't seem all that fast on the field at Penn State. And moreover, whatever injury he had kept him out of testing the whole way. So we still don't have testing data on him. But the suspicion is that he is rather slow. He not much of a leaper. And this is at a build, for what it's worth, that's rather dense. Like, he's got to be like, what is it, like 5'11", 210 or something like that. So that's a stocky build. And I think with his reach dimensions and his body density, that would normally trend toward sort of the slot. I think he could compare to someone like Jarvis Landry. And the reason I say Jarvis Landry is that both players were very, very productive in college. Parker Washington was super, super productive at Penn State, even though it was
with Sean Clifford.
Right, yeah, with Sean Clifford propping him up. And but yeah, it's in either case, it's like, I don't know how these guys are doing these things they're doing. Like, I don't know why over and over Parker Washington keeps coming down with this ball. He's not separating from anyone. He's not running away from anyone. He's not overpowering anyone. But he does keep reeling it in over and over. And at some point, the question of why, just doesn't even become that interesting. It's like, well, it just is. And a game like Washington had is awfully encouraging, because that is what he did at Penn State over and over, was games like last week. So that isn't anything new for him. Failure would be new for him. And by all accounts, there's a bunch of routes up for grabs here. So I don't know. I might be the wrong person to ask, because I'm optimistic about him as a prospect. But if there are 45, 50 snaps for Parker Washington in this game, I'd probably rank him a lot higher than most people would. I understand why people would just have a default kind of suspicion of a rookie, but Parker Washington has never done anything less than really good job.
Yeah, he's always been solid, and I'll do a little bit of a counter to your point on the lack of testing numbers. Being the combine slappies that we are, is there one school that turns out athletic freaks more than Penn State, outside of like your traditional like Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia type? Like, Penn State's strength and conditioning program got Troy Apke drafted,
Yeah,
so maybe he is more athletic than we think.
I hope so. I just think that intel would have existed beforehand and been kind of promoted. Like, when Odafe Owe and Micah Parsons were coming up, Bruce Feldman, like going into their sophomore years, was on like, oh yeah, this fella's running a 4.3. They tell me, rumors from Pennsylvania. There's a 4.3 running Micah Parsons been spotted. And it's sometimes those freak list reports, you see that and you're like, yeah, whatever. No one can do that. That's stupid. And it turns out to be true. Like, he'll have some bum from like Appalachian State, like, oh yeah, this guy has a 47-inch vertical and runs a 4.2, and it just small school lies basically. With the Parson and Owe stuff, it was like, my God, they actually are averaging a 4.3640 between them.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but I worry that whatever was in whatever water, whatever Gatorade they were giving those guys was kept out of Parker Washington's served Gatorade.
Fair enough. But I'm choosing to believe. I had to scoop him in a league that this week. We're really scratching and clawing there. I definitely just drank the Kool-Aid or the Gatorade.
No, I just said I'd be higher than most people. I have trouble projecting targets for Washington that turn out poorly. Like I'd worry about maybe not getting targets because they just run the ball or run such a primitive offense. But if he's running routes, if he were to fail, it would be the first time he ever had.
That is true. We do have an interesting Jacksonville related question in the chat that I've been waiting to get to. Ingram or Dallas Goedert coming off the injury?
Oh, right. I forgot to address the Ingram part of it. I think he's a good player. I thought in that game, just as every other game with Jacksonville, his usage was crap, nonsense, no good. Hate it. He's not going to have that long yards after the catch touchdown most games. Most games you're just stuck with those stupid 6 catches for 40 yards nonsense. And this is a terrible way to run an offense. It's a terrible misuse of Evan Ingram's abilities. But because I have no reason to believe they'll use him in a way that makes sense, the greater share of the offense that he's likely to get, in my opinion, might just as rapidly or even more rapidly get offset by declines in efficiency. Because think about how the plays that he's been getting look. That it's usually because it's a check down type function, and it's usually because the defense kind of didn't cover him. And now you're getting just, instead of this theoretical safety valve, it's just a no threat route that the defense is sitting on anyway, because there's no one else that they have to be concerned with. So if you were using Ingram on double moves and getting him post routes from the slot and then, throwing him the ball 10 times, I'd be like, watch out. That's going to be a big game for Ingram right there. But because it's all going to be 4-yard curls where the defense is just jumping every single route, I am less optimistic. I am absolutely disgusted with how they use that guy. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it was very cathartic for him to finally have the big game and the touchdown.
You saw how fast he was?
Yes,
you saw how fast he was. They keep him within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage at almost all times. Absolutely insane.
Yep. So the story continues for him because in New York, it was kind of the same deal where they just weren't.
The quarterback couldn't throw the ball, so they started running a 4-yard curl offense with Ingram. And then, even though he's on different teams, they got to keep using him like he did in with the Giants. How about using him like they were using him at Mississippi? Look at that. He's averaging 17 yards a catch for Mississippi. That's easy.
Seems pragmatic. I feel like I would explore that particular detail a little bit more closely if I were. Sure,
I would probably go with Goddard though. They're saying he's fine. I don't know how he's back already, but I don't know.
How does he just have these season-ending injuries that he just comes back from in season? Didn't he got hurt for a while last year too? Breaks his arm this year and he's just back.
Bigfoot DNA? I don't know.
I think so.
Something like that. But
South Dakota State, folks.
It's a tough matchup. I don't mean to make it sound like it's easy. It's just I think that the Ingram matchup is tough too because he's going to have the defense just jumping on him.
Yeah, there's restrictor plate type of things going on with that Jacksonville offense and CJ Beathard. So that's definitely understandable. On the Browns side, a lot of questions in the chat about Jerome Ford. Your thoughts on him this week?
I don't know. I can't really understand the way that the Browns have been using some of their personnel. That includes running back. I know Kareem Hunt is getting decent results, but I feel like they're not good enough to warrant the prominence they've been giving them. And I don't know why they would take that usage away from Ford. I thought Ford only gave them, Ford's not breaking down exactly. I know he had that one injury, but he's holding up. They're giving him 40 snaps a game. It's like, if you can give the guy 40 snaps, then just give him those Kareem Hunt carries. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just stop screwing around. So if Kareem Hunt is out, even with a tough Jacksonville defense and one that I already said I think will do better in general, I like Ford enough, especially because I think the Jaguars offense might struggle to the point that the Browns get really short fields. I think for a low-scoring game, probably low-scoring game, Ford has a pretty high touchdown probability here, especially if Kareem Hunt is out, I should say. If Kareem Hunt is in, I guess I'm just kind of searching for reasons to be optimistic at that point. But I do think Ford has shown that he's a totally good player, or serviceable, certainly more so than Hunt. So I hope he gets the shot here, but I just don't know what the Browns think they're doing.
Yeah, it's that their backfield management post Chubb has been weird to say the least. And then Elijah Moore obviously was very busy this past weekend. 12 targets, only caught 4 of them, but I think he led the league in air yards. I think I heard that somewhere. So I mean that's interesting. And I thought one of my bigger takeaways from Monday night's game, as far as the Jaguars go, I love this guy because he went to Georgia, but Tyson Campbell looked like a bit of a liability. Obviously, you're going to.
He was playing hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, Tyson Campbell's, in my opinion, really good. Not like, how do you say this? He's not in that top 5 kind of thing, but he's like knocking on the door of the top 10, and he's tough. But in any case, I don't know what to expect from Elijah Moore specifically, because maybe I just need to accept that he's not as good as I hoped he would be. I feel like he still has a lot of encouraging indicators in his prospect profile, and he was so decisively great at Mississippi, that particularly because he's an underclassman who's played on really stupid teams and has had all this turnover, I'm kind of willing to make excuses for him that I wouldn't for other players, but it's like I'm getting forced to make more excuses than I expected to have to. 12 targets is great on 50 snaps, but 4 catches for 83 yards. It's like the week before, 3 on 9. So that's not going to work. Like, you cannot be catching under 50% of your passes as like a slot kind of guy. That's just ridiculous. So something has to change for the better. He's still only 23, won't be 24 until late March. He's probably still developing. He has time to get it together. I know that even now he is still yet to play on a functional passing offense, but 4 of 12 targets. That's all due to Amari Cooper getting hurt in that game, I think.
Right.
And Cooper, granted, has not been practicing yet, so he might be out for this game. We could be recreating this scenario for Moore, and it could be that the Browns have no choice but to feed him, even if the results are, otherwise intolerably bad. It would help if Trey Herndon was out again. That's the guy more than Campbell that I would expect him to be looking at. I don't even remember who the slot replacement was for the Jags in that game, but I'm not so much worried about Tyson Campbell. It's just that I can't figure out what Moore is at this point. And I have a lot of respect for the coordinator Caldwell for the Jags. So if Cooper is out, I do worry a little bit about Caldwell having a good idea of how to spam Moore's areas of the field. But geez, I mean, if he's catching like 40% of his passes, they don't even need to. It's like you'd almost want the Browns to throw it to him.
Yeah, just keep doing it. He's going to catch 33% of them. We do have a team defense question pertaining to this game. You like the Browns defense at home against CJ Beathard, or the Packers defense on the road against Tommy DeVito?
Excuse me. Browns. I prefer, just because I think it's got a lot more firepower. Oh, also, I think it's the easier matchup, but the Browns have more firepower.
Yeah, I think so too. But it was worthy of considering. I thought, just because the Giants' offense is not one that we're.
Press Taylor, at the very least, is no Brian Dable.
That we know. Let's see. Let's keep rolling here. We've got Panthers Saints. Saints 4.5-point favorites. A lot of Jonathan Mingo chatter in the chat.
Boo!
I know.
No,
I'm not
Mingo allowed.
No,
he's an all right player, but I'm sorry, this is an easy one to call. David Tepper is telling the coaches to game plan Mingo into the offense, because taking DJ Chark off the field, the times that Chark is on the field, he's drawing targets more rapidly, doing a lot more with those targets than Mingo. Like, John, how is it? Please tell me how this is that the Panthers passing game is so rich, so luxurious and successful that they can put DJ Chark on the bench as he's averaging 7.6 yards per target. This offense running from the same position, more or less, Jonathan Mingo's averaging 5.3 yards per target. Like, this guy's drawing targets at a rate much more rapidly than he did at Mississippi. He's running on the field with Adam Thielen and DJ Chark drawing targets more rapidly than he did at Mississippi with Malik Heath and Dontario Drummond and Sanders or whatever that one was. This is absurd. I'm sorry. And the results confirm that it's absurd because Mingo is not doing well. The 5.3 yards per target, anybody else is getting benched. But because David Tepper meddles with this team and puts his hands on absolutely everything, we can conclude that he also had a hand in the Mingo selection, just as he likely has a hand in telling the coaches to play Mingo more than Chark, even though Chark does more with every snap that they give him, and even though they desperately need the help. So, yes, David Tepper will keep dictating that Mingo get forced the ball, but one thing I need everybody to just let go of right now is the idea that he would like transcend the circumstances of this offense. And the circumstances of this offense are horrendous. Even if this were a good passing game, I think there would be serious cause to doubt Mingo's ability to do anything with the usage that he is otherwise getting. But Bryce Young is still the quarterback. So even though I'm kind of bashing Mingo, he also doesn't even really get a fair shot with the way that the quarterback is playing. Not just that, now that they're forcing him the ball for a number of weeks in a row now, defenses are going to actually start game planning for him. Before they do, where's Thielen? Where's that fast one? Yeah, Chark, where's he? Okay, we got them accounted for, whatever, let them spin their wheels. Now that they're throwing it this much to Mingo, defenses are going to say, like, him? All right, yeah, put someone on him. And let's see how it goes this time. Not good.
So I'm doubting that one. I think that's fool's gold. On the New Orleans side of things, Derek Carr was limited at practice on Wednesday. He is, so banged up. I feel like Jameis
should be illegalized. I can't stand watching any more Derek Carr, dude. It is so painful to watch him.
It's grim. It's really grim. Don't like it. Do not want. But beyond that, what are your expectations for the Saints offense? Olave and Shaheed if he's back.
Carr needs the defense to screw up really, really bad, and you better hope too that he's not like too nervous at that time. Better hope he's not, I don't know. He's like, he gets scared at the opportunity sometimes. Even it's the blitz, the guy standing over the line of scrimmage acting like he's going to blitz. That ruins the whole play. That throws him off enough. But just because someone's wide open doesn't mean he'll get it there either. But safe to say those are the situations he needs. Olave, though, should get wide open against these corners, and Shaheed certainly dangerous. So, but the problem is, man, John, we saw A.T. Perry get wide open last week, and Carr just would not throw him the ball or would miss the ball when he would throw him the ball. Like, A.T. Perry is not that easy to miss. So, maybe the Panthers screw up so bad that they make Derek Carr look good, but Ejiro Evero is one of the best defensive coaches in the league, and I'd be a little surprised if he was blindsided by whatever it is that the Saints try to do here. So Olave can transcend. I think Shaheed can transcend too, but they'll need to because those corners, they're at a disadvantage talent-wise, but they're going to have good instruction from the defensive coordinating. And I don't know, man. I just can't see an offense operating with Carr. It's like even to the extent that they move the ball, it's just this kind of desperation drill, it's like, it's just so brutal to watch. And I don't think if he's hurt, I don't think that's going to help any of it.
Nope. So this is that's a gross one all around. I don't think we need to linger too much longer on this matchup. Let's go Texans Jets. We've got the Jets as 4-point underdogs at home. This line, I feel like, has moved a little bit this week. It was at 6.5 in favor of the Texans as of Monday. Now it's 3.5. Can you give any explanation why it would go this much in the Jets' direction? Is that the Zach Wilson effect?
That must be it. But if it's not that, what is it exactly? Maybe we need not call it like the Zach Wilson bump, but maybe like the not Tim Boyle trampoline in hell shot back up to earth kind of scenario. I don't know. It's like it's not a dead cat bounce. It's more serious than that, but maybe that's what it is. And Tim Boyle is that bad, so I guess it kind of makes some sense. I guess my problem is I don't know why the Jets would get that close almost no matter who the quarterback, at least out of the candidates they have. It's not like I would have been like, oh, but if they switch to Zach Wilson, the Texans got to be careful. I don't feel that way at all. So I don't know if damn, John, look at this. And more than 2/3 of the bets are on the Texans, and this is happening still. That's crazy. What is going on? This has to be mob stuff. There's some kind of the point shave contract was finalized, and somebody's gonna throw it for the Texans to the Jets apparently, or the refs are gonna overtake the whole game. I don't know, but as far as a foreseeable reason, I have none. I don't think the absence of Tank Dell is worth that much.
No, maybe a half point.
Or I guess the line would have been set before that anyway. But as far as how the hell the Jets get within 3 points of the Texans, I've got nothing for you. Nothing at all. I have no idea.
It's not making a whole lot of sense to me either.
The under. It takes the under at the very least, right? Like yes. The Texans not scoring has to be the only way that happens.
Pretty much. And the total is low here at 33 and a half, depending on where you're looking. I've noticed a decent amount of hand-wringing about Nico Collins this week because of the matchup. But I think you've kind of stated over the course of the year that, not that he's bad or anything, but maybe the deference and reverence towards Sauce Gardner is a tidbit overblown. Like, are we that worried about him to where we would consider benching Collins?
Oh God, no benching. Man, that would be. Do not bench Collins, no matter who he plays against with Tank Dell out. I mean, that ball is going to him or it's going to nobody, and I would bet it's going to him. So there's a lot to unpack there, really, because it is kind of complicated, and the concern insofar as like the Jets' pass defense is good, therefore that's bad for Collins. That's more or less true. Like this should be a pretty stressful game for CJ Stroud. It's just that the Texans can stress a defense like the Jets too. It's not just one side is bullying the other. It's like both of these sides are dangerous. And in the case of Collins, the issue, even more than the matchup, is again, the Texans can't move the ball unless it's Collins. And it is possible that the Texans basically do not move the ball, but that would be a pretty extreme outcome for them, the way they've played this year. So as far as the specific matchup goes, another thing to keep in mind is that generally, to this point this year anyway, I don't think the Jets have played Gardner in any sort of assigned matchup role. He plays on one side of the field only. And so they can make this game, the Texans, if they want, should be able to make this game Nico Collins versus DJ Reed. If it really must come down to fear of Sauce Gardner, then they can just put him on someone else. But I don't think that Gardner is that threatening to Collins that they would need to go to that extent unless they just thought Reed was that much more vulnerable. Specifically, I don't think Gardner can track Collins over some of the like slant and in-breaking routes that he's been running in this Slowick offense. And John, you remember at Michigan, it was the exact opposite. Like the in-breaking routes and the slants for Collins this year, they've been popping. And that's total bizarro world to Michigan Nico Collins, who only ran post routes and fly routes only on the sideline. And if he were only running post routes and fly routes only on the sideline, then I'd say, okay, Gardner's a problem, because Gardner being 6'3", Gardner being able to patrol the sideline, cover 3 style the way he does, that's not where Collins is going to make it happen. Not without a double move anyway. But you set up that double move, even so, with those those slant breaking routes. And Gardner just as someone like Tariq Woolen, with the Seahawks, like just like Jamel Dean with the Buccaneers, the more you pull them away from the sideline and toward the center of the field, the more uncomfortable they get. And Collins has shown this year, he's not just comfortable running those routes. They've been some of his best plays. His over the middle kind of stuff has been some of his most productive moments this year. So Gardner has struggled with the routes that Collins has already won on many times this year. And I don't think they need to make a run against Gardner.
So looking a little bit deeper, not just for this week, but beyond, with Dell being out, obviously we expect Collins to really be, someone that probably, when we look at the end of season, who was on the highest percentage of league winners, Collins is probably going to be on there. But where does the slack left behind with Dell's injury, like where does that end up? Because, Collins is going to tick up a little bit in the usage as well, but where else does this go for Houston as far as their pass catching guys and what we can expect for fantasy?
Well, apparently it's not going to be Robert Woods all that much, although I guess he'll have to play close to a 3-down role. We'll see how much Noah Brown picks up. I personally think Noah Brown is total system player. I've had Noah Brown trolls on Twitter going after me, John, for my suggestion that he's one of the least useful players in the league. I still think that's true. I mean, his yards per target this year is twice what it was in Dallas, and he played 5 years in Dallas, not 5 games with the Texans. So the Slowick offense has been raking this year. Brown has been one of the most obvious unsustainable beneficiaries of this. 9.1 yards after the catch per catch. That's going to be a third of that 2 years from now. So those 2 huge games against the Buccaneers and the Bengals, they're not happening again. Even if Brown is some version of productive, like that stuff, it's over. Let it go. I feel like the Jets defense, unless they're screwing up their zone handoffs over like the middle portion of the field, which I guess that's where they're easier beats than they are in the boundaries. But unless they're screwing up those plays, I don't know how Brown does a whole lot against these guys. I feel like that really aggressive press cover 3 kind of stuff that the Jets do, especially when you add in the pass rush and how that makes the quarterback get rid of it quicker yet. I don't know if Brown even really gets off the line that much in this game outside of maybe like hurry up situations where the Jets are kind of spreading out their own defense. Like if Noah Brown is lining up outside, I'm worried that he just is like 3 yards within the line of scrimmage every time Stroud throws the ball. So I can see, that the risk for Collins in this game is that there's so much slack falling on him that the Jets start selling out against him and finding some success with it because of the others being unable to make an impact. But John, I'm Xavier Hutchinson truther. I think we both have some amount of optimism for John Mechie. Actually, I meant to discuss this specifically. We're about to find out something important with John Mechie, or something important about the way the Texans view him anyway, which is, was he kept in a part-time, 1.5 down role because Dell was better than him, so much better than him? Or was it that Mechie is still working his way back to full health?
Right.
If Mechie only plays 20 snaps in this game, we know it was the second one.
Yep.
And I'm not saying the first one means Mechie's like toast or something. I think he's good enough as a prospect that we can say like that would not mean that he is toast. But if he doesn't get to 30, 40 snaps in this game, we know it's because basically his body couldn't handle it yet. And that would mean in the future, we'd have to, probably give more assumption to Mechie's presence in the offense because he'd probably be further recovered next year than he was this year. But yeah, that's something to watch for. If he goes to 40 snaps in this game, that in a way would be kind of bad for his prospect profile because it would mean they deliberately played him less. But you know what? Noah Brown playing more, Robert Woods playing more, that ends that possibility to me. So at the very least, we're either going to see like what he can do, even though maybe he's still dealing with some fatigue or stuff like that, or we're going to see Hutchinson play 30 or 40 snaps. And even then, I'm a Hutchinson truther. So if the Jets are selling out to cutting everybody else loose to sell out against Collins, I don't think Hutchinson would fail then. I think if you put Hutchinson in these snaps that Noah Brown has gotten this year, you get the same or better results. So I might just be too high on Hutchinson, but I just can't get myself worried about the Texans passing game here.
I'm very leveraged on John Mechie. I think he's one of my most drafted late round receivers in best ball. So I would love to see a bit of an uptick from him as we hit the stretch run. And John Mechie is also how telemarketers pronounce my name.
I got to remember to start doing that.
It's not that hard, folks, but some people. Let's get on over to the afternoon window. Got a few more games to fly through here. We've got Vikings Raiders. So we started to unpack the Vikings offense going into this week, coming off the bye. They get Justin Jefferson back, but to detail it a little bit further, how does this set up against the Raiders?
I think it sets up good. I mean, the Vikings, their offensive line, at least for pass blocking, is probably something like, well, it's got to be top 5. It might be top 3. And if you can have the kind of offensive line personnel where they're just neutralizing opposing pass rushes, even good ones, then you should be able to go against a player like Crosby and sell out against him and minimize his presence in the game. Even if you're kind of cutting loose these other guys, what are the Raiders going to do with that? Like they've got no one else who can get to you. So I think the Vikings have like the capital on the offensive line to neutralize Crosby. And if you neutralize Crosby, the defense for the Raiders is just kind of not much after that. Right. And I think that, again, maybe I'm getting a little too high on McConnell's abilities of game planning, but I think with the bye week, there's a pretty good chance, and also Justin Jefferson coming back, I think there's a pretty good chance that O'Connell can put together basically like a 35 to 40 play package that makes Dobbs look good again. Like if it was like they need him to get into a 75 snap shootout, yeah, I worry about that wearing out over the course of the game, but they should have like an initial script that I think is challenging for the Raiders. And Dobbs is one of those guys, if he gets rolling a little bit, he can settle in, because especially if the run threat is there. Like, think about it. If you're a defense going against this offense, your primary concern is stopping Justin Jefferson. And even if you do, for a couple drives, keep Justin Jefferson way below his customary production, you're risking Addison getting a little too much room over there. And then if Dobbs hits that, and then if Dobbs, does the play action bootleg run to get the defense a little spooked about the rush threat the other side, the defense all of a sudden starts spreading itself thinner, and everything sort of starts opening up everything else for the offense. And I think that should be the general kind of nature of this game for the Vikings offense.
And then beyond that, on the Raiders side, I don't know, for whatever reason, it feels like the Raiders have been on a bye for like a month. They've just been so far off my radar. Totally memory hold.
They're no longer interesting without Josh McDaniels there, so we don't talk about them anymore.
I know, we're big Antonio Pierce guys and all, but it's still a very blah outfit that they've got out there. But what can we expect from Jacobs and Devontae Adams in the Michael Mayer even going up against the Vikings defense?
So the Vikings, to me, have pretty much a crap defense. I know not all the metrics say that. Some metrics say they're actually good. I kind of think they just haven't played many good teams. And I think that the blitzing stuff that Brian Flores does is asking for a lot of trouble, especially against a receiver like Adams or even Myers, I guess. I mean, those guys, they know a lot about like option route type stuff and making reads of zone coverages and knowing where to go and stuff like that. And as long as O'Connell knows the way they're thinking, those receivers should get separation. I think it's like if the Vikings blitz like they tend to, then they'll need O'Connell to pull a Derek Carr and just freeze and like not throw the ball, even though his guys are open. I don't know if that's really O'Connell's kind of thing. I mean, I didn't really take him that seriously as a quarterback prospect, but that flaw of Carr's is a very particular one. I think
the fainting goat.
Yeah, the fainting coward goat. And I don't, like, O'Connell might be limited. He's not anywhere near as talented as Carr, but I don't have any reason to think he's the coward that Carr is. So I think that I don't know, especially with this, you have to think of stuff sometimes in like RPG terms too, and like Antonio Pierce, I think, is sort of like a stat booster for Aiden O'Connell. Like, if there's like a courage stat or something, like Antonio Pierce is like a +1 to that category, and maybe lets O'Connell keep it together here. But there's no one who can cover those receivers in the Vikings secondary. So if the pass rush doesn't get there, and if O'Connell doesn't just completely blow it, making misreads, then those receivers have to be open. Jacobs, I worry a little bit about, in that it would make sense for the Vikings defense to sell out against the run to try to stop Jacobs, like basically betting that O'Connell can't do it if they sell it to stop the run. So I worry about that for Jacobs. But when he's getting the kind of workload that he gets, and when he's capable of making the plays that he can, it's not like an actionable concern. And he's too good to worry about things like that, basically.
That's true. And he's going to get the work. So that, I think it sets up fine for him. Let's go Niners, Seahawks. Niners 10.5 point favorites. Niners look like the best team in football to me.
That's fair. Yeah, the Eagles, not for more than 3 quarters anyway, didn't put up much of a pushback to that idea. So seems unlikely that the Seahawks would do it better. I mean, short of short of the 49ers having some kind of dynamic of like emotional hangover or like not looking at the next week seriously because they're so invested in the one before or whatever else. Short of that, they have a lot of, pretty decisive advantages over the Seahawks as they do against almost any team. So I do think there's a way to like to make the 49ers defense uncomfortable and take it out of its element. But I don't know if the Seahawks are really the team to do it. I guess they have the receiver personnel. Basically, like I've talked about for weeks, I think you need to get 3 corners on the field for the 49ers, and you need to find to put together a combination of stressors that makes it so that the 49ers can't double the corners who need the help, who are Lenoir and Ambry Thomas. So it's like DK Metcalf, I worry that especially if they don't line him up on the field opposite Ward. If they put Ward on Metcalf, I think that's one of the last corners Metcalf wants to see, and maybe even in single coverage, Ward can take care of him. That would be bad because then it would leave the double resources to take out Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett against Lenoir and Ambry Thomas. But if they could get Metcalf against Thomas, that would be an easy way to attack. It would force the double team from the safety. It would force them to leave single coverage on Lenoir. Something like that is what they'd have to set up, and they'd need to hope that Geno, spots it, gets it there before the pass rush gets to him. It's a lot of conditions that need meeting, whereas with the 49ers offense, like no conditions necessary. It's just everything's going to be on the table all the time. No change.
There's not much useful discourse about the Niners from a fantasy perspective. If you have one of their guys, you're starting them, and that's just kind of it. But Seattle's more interesting. I mean, they got off the mat in a way last week against Dallas that, it was like one of the more impressive losses that I feel like that I've seen in a little bit, because I thought the Cowboys were going to boat race them. They did not. You put up 35 points on Dallas's defense in Dallas. You have my attention again. But to your point, Metcalf was doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. Unbelievable stuff from him. Like when he has his A game, I don't know if there's anything that's more fun to watch in the NFL. Just so physically dominant, it's ridiculous. But this setup might be a little bit trickier for him. Your thoughts on would you start Jackson Smith and Jigba this week? He is starting to get more involved in this offense.
Well, I don't really like want to start him. I'm not calling him like a must start, but if you don't have an obvious better alternative, then it's probably not worth stressing about either. It's like sometimes even in tough matchups, the matchup could end up being tough for DK Metcalf, and it could be like there's slack left, and even if it's not useful slack for the Seahawks, it could just be like this is what it looks like when our offense is losing. In fantasy, the look of the offense losing can be that PPR receiver paying off quite well because they get like 4 more targets than they usually do because Metcalf didn't do as much as he usually does. So there's a lot of ways that bad signs for the Seahawks offense doesn't all fall on Smith and Jigba. The only reason I don't fly to him as a option in fantasy is just as simple as the 49ers pass defense is really tough. And if I go a little further, they're specifically tough in the parts of the field that Smith and Jigba runs a lot. I think the way you hurt the 49ers is spreading their corner personnel thin and then making them defend a lot of the field. And Smith and Jigba, to this point, other than those like leak looks and I don't know, a couple double move sort of things, like he can't get to that depth. Like his primary range of functioning is kind of uncomfortably close to where Fred Warner is. So it's not, I'm not seeing this as like an obvious breakout spot exactly.
Yeah, I don't either. I am lightly surprised that we don't see more cut-ups of his crazy catch against the 49ers on Thanksgiving night. That catch was insane, and I feel like it doesn't get the airtime that it deserves. But beyond that, I am concerned when it comes to the backfield for Seattle, because neither Charbonnet nor Kenneth Walker were able to practice on Wednesday. We'll have to see later this afternoon what the practice report looks like, but if they're down to DJ Dallas and Kenny Mack and it's all on Geno and they're kind of a one-note offense, I think this could get pretty ugly in a hurry for Seattle.
I guess so. The reason I think it might be a little more complicated is that the way I see it anyway, there was nothing for the Seahawks to do on the ground in this game. I didn't think that they'd be running on the 49ers no matter what. So while I do think it's important for an offense to have a rush threat in general, it's only useful insofar as the defense actually responds to it. And I worry that the 49ers, even if Walker and Charbonnet were to have some success running the ball, it's like how do I say this? I just worry that they wouldn't need to change that formula in the secondary at all to address the rush threat. And so I worry that no matter what the run game is doing, no matter how much the Seahawks commit to it, there would always be that sort of surplus detail in the secondary where the 49ers can always give that additional help to that other second or third corner and thus kind of keep themselves in a comfortable place. I think to make the 49ers stress at all, I don't know if you get there by running at all. Like I don't know if that's specifically how you make it happen. I think it's like
right.
if the Seahawks are going to stress the 49ers defense at all, it would have never been running back production that was on the table. It was always dependent entirely on those receivers, all three of them being concurrent threats to get the 49ers coverage shells basically dislodged and create openings that don't normally exist. And if you go too wide, too tight end, I think you're always playing into the 49ers hands because you're always putting that third corner who needs help onto the bench where obviously he does not need help. So yeah. And the bigger you make your personnel, the more of the field you're handing over to Fred Warner. So I don't know. I'm not trying to make it sound like that it's a good thing or like not a concern that the Seahawks can't run the ball. I don't know. I just think they, if anything, it's like the more they run in this game, the more they're kind of hastening their own loss.
Yeah, like even if they were at full go, like they probably weren't going to be in line for a big day on the ground anyway. Let's keep going here. We've got a good one out in Kansas City. We've got the Chiefs as 1.5-point favorites against the Bills. This was 3 points earlier this week.
Two fraud teams. Two
yes.
frauds.
So I tweeted about it this week. I've been leading the charge as a Bills are fraudulent guy. I kind of like them in this spot though. They're coming off the bye, and I think I don't know the way that the AFC is setting up right now with all the other quarterback injuries and the way that Josh Allen played it against the Eagles. I know it's like more anecdotal than anything, and he still is a threat to just turn the ball over until the Bills lose. But I don't know. I think the Bills can go in there and get it done.
Fair enough. I'm a little skeptical of the Bills here. It's not so much that I have any kind of faith, benefit of the doubt that I'm giving the Chiefs offense. I'm not doing it anymore. That offer has been pulled. You either knock off this Justin Watson nonsense or I am going to hate and I almost wish bad things for them, honestly. I mean, it's such a stupid waste. Stop screwing around. Put the ball in the hands of your best players. Just stop doing anything else. But Andy Reid is not so easily moved. And
well, yeah,
unless you have a Terrell Owens kind of variable stepping in to just force his hand about how the receivers are going to get managed, he'll dink around and waste 6 years of Donovan McNabb's prime trying to throw the ball to Todd Stinkston and James Trash. And I know you must have heard talk sports radio in the early 2000s, John.
Oh,
when you were on the way to the Baltimore Cleveland game that Jamal Lewis set the record at. So yeah, this is Andy Reid's thing. His whole career narrative has been reforged in recent seasons. But the story of Andy Reid's career is that he's like a brilliant quarterbacks coach who loves terrible receivers who waste the careers of his quarterbacks. And it's the largest reason why he got fired from the Eagles. Is like by the time they got good receivers for him, he had Kevin Cobb at quarterback, and they're like, all right, enough of this. Yeah. So it's Pat Mahomes that made Andy Reid, not the other way around, right? And now we're seeing the limits of what Mahomes can do with everything else working against him. I mean, so they got to start putting some serious NFL reps at receiver, or they can watch Mahomes get returns less than what his own abilities would ever merit. And that's something I expect to be an ongoing issue here. My reason for leaning more so the Chiefs is just that I still think their defense is legit. And I think it's the kind of defense. I almost wonder, John, if Steve Spagnuolo in some ways has been building this defense specifically to stop Josh Allen in the Bills offense, traumatized from the Gabe Davis game in the playoffs. Because I feel like this Chiefs defense just indicates so much trouble for Josh Allen, and not so much like not as in like it's a failure of Josh Allen's to struggle against a defense like this. I mean, in large part, or just as much, the way that Brandon Beane has built that offense. Like, I don't know if they have the pieces to threaten the Chiefs. So I'm worried that this could be a difficult setup for Allen. Not because of the Arrowhead effect. He actually seems to be one of the few players not affected by Arrowhead. But I do think what can affect him is L'Jarius Sneed press doubling Stephon Diggs every play, and then Gabe Davis getting locked up by Trent McDuffie on the other side, or anybody really, because especially if they're going to keep doing this thing with Davis where they make him run 18 yards downfield for every target, you might as well play 10 on 11. You might just play 10 on 11. It's easier, gets to the next read faster that way. So that's to me a concerning set of details to go against the particular way the Chiefs play defense. And the Bills run defense can't, in my opinion, easily neutralize Isaiah Pacheco. So even if Mahomes struggles, I still feel like the Chiefs should be able to move the ball more consistently than the Bills, who are usually reduced to just kind of like, Josh Allen, please do some kind of heroic thing for us. And if not, just go ahead and throw that interception,
Yeah, like does he have it on this drive, or are we going 3 and out? Those are like the two ways that a Bills drive tends to end up. I just am of the opinion that there's something wrong with the Chiefs, and obviously I think that there's things wrong with the Bills as well. But I feel like the Bills, even in their losing effort against the Eagles, showed me something, and I think that they might make a bit of a run here. They might be able to make the playoffs. Yeah, I
gotta make a call. Watch that offense, the Bills offense, get worse now that Dawson Knox is coming back. They're gonna make themselves slower. They're gonna get slower and not enough bigger, or not enough for any useful things with that bulk. They're not gonna become a demonic rushing attack because Dawson Knox is blocking in line. It's like they're just gonna get slower and they're gonna still suck at running the ball.
No, yeah, they're definitely not going to be a team that can run the ball particularly effectively unless it's a Josh Allen rush. Let's go Chargers Broncos. Chargers 2.5-point favorites at home.
How about let's not?
Yeah.
crap division, crap teams certainly in this one. But I mean, Justin Herbert, in my opinion, is very good, and I think that Keenan Allen, if he's healthy enough, should be in a good enough spot here that you can say like this should be an okay Herbert game. Anytime Allen is beneath like 80 yards or so, you have to go, oh my God, did Herbert finish with less than 100? But I'm not worried about that in this particular setup.
Yeah, I don't know. The Broncos have been better defensively than obviously they were in September, but maybe still not amazing. They had the chance to win the game last week in Houston, came up a little bit short on that last drive there. I don't know. I think the Broncos can go in there and win. I'm a little bit confused by the line, a little scared of it as a result. But
the Broncos. The Broncos play that style of football where it's like you try to shorten the game so much that it basically comes down to a coin flip. And even if you're bad at anything in particular, the coin odds kind of just even out over time.
The coin has a say, as the band Every Time I Die once said in their album Low Teens. But beyond that, what's up with Austin Eckler?
Yeah. I think he's still limited, or was at some recent point limited by the high ankle sprain. But one thing I'm just not understanding is like all the dismaying about the outcomes with Eckler. It's like we could have predicted that he would be in a really bad spot here at this point. And again, like against the Ravens, like what did we expect? More than 64 yards on 15 touches? It's a bad matchup, and he's the only player other than Keenan Allen who can do anything with the ball. So the basic issue with Eckler is that he might not have a perfectly healthy ankle, and he's playing in conditions that are far more hostile than he has ever played in the NFL. That's it.
Yep.
And it's not any solace to the fantasy investors, but this happens sometimes, and it's stupid and it's annoying, and it shouldn't have happened because if Tom Telesco weren't hired as the GM, John, if I had been the GM instead, none of this would be happening, and none of these people would be calling Austin Eckler a bum. Like, there's all these people just like, Austin Eckler sucks now. Like, you are out of your mind. Just shut your mouth, man. Seriously, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, the conditions remain bad, but this matchup against Denver is not, in my opinion, is not nearly as bad as Baltimore or going on the road to New England in a game where Keenan Allen's like 60% healthy and the Patriots don't have to worry about him even. Like, that's so brutal.
Yeah, no one's really succeeding under those conditions. So that's some good context when it comes to Eckler, because I'm leveraged on Eckler and I've been frustrated by the results this year, but to certain extents, like they are out of his control. The Chargers really have two options on offense, as we've detailed in Eckler himself. Probably not at 100%, and that offensive line probably middling at best. And one of the stranger plot lines this year is Kellen Moore was the guy holding the Cowboys back, it seems like, which is not what a lot of us thought.
I will go ahead and predict that Brandon Staley had plenty of say, or speculate, I should say, that Staley had a lot of input on this offense, because it looks exactly the same to me as last year. I mean,
putting the stale in Staley, am I right? Let's get on to the Sunday night. Very excited for this one. We've got the Eagles going to Dallas. It was not long ago that the Eagles were 10-1 and had a stranglehold on the number one seed in the NFC. Now, if they lose this game, which Vegas expects, they are 3-point underdogs on the road here. All of a sudden, they are, I think, tied for the division lead with the Cowboys, and their head-to-head will have evened out. What, I don't know, what do the Eagles feel a little bit desperate to you, almost like that, like all the in-season additions, like making the move for Kevin Byard, signing what's left of Shaq Leonard. It feels like they're just trying everything. Like there's almost like an internal panic there.
I don't know. I think that stuff's pretty consistent with Howie Roseman's methods. I mean, they even when they were rolling a couple years ago or last year, whenever it was, it's like they went out and signed like Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. They kind of, he's always trying to do super team kind of stuff. He's always signing Nnamdi Asomugha. He's always signing Vince Young as a backup quarterback. Like, this is always what the Eagles under Roseman have done. But they certainly have reason to be a bit panicked. Like, even if that wasn't the reason for those moves, it's a secondary thing that they should be feeling. And this is a tough one for me to break down, impartially, because I have a very specific theory and have for weeks had a very specific theory about what's going on here. But I think the Eagles are point blank throwing the ball way too much. And at this point, they're not even getting like the benefit of the doubt of the rush threat there. It's like teams have noticed, like, Swift was doing a good job. I don't know why they've gone away from him as much, but like they're making Hurts throw the ball too much. And you could see that in the fact that his turnover rate was just skyrocketing leading up even before last week. And so through 403 pass attempts now, he has 10 interceptions, whereas last year he finished with 460 pass attempts and 6 interceptions. The yards per attempt is down 0.6. So that's really bad, because that means returns for guys like, even not so much AJ Brown, I guess, but Smith, his returns have diminished a little bit. And I think we're at that point where it's just very simply overexposure. The Eagles need to be able to threaten more of the field with route runners from the personnel packages that they're running their pass plays, or they need to, from that personnel package, throw the ball less. It's as simple as that to me. They've run out of ways to strain the defense's bandwidths from the personnel packages that they run. And until they start doing different things from those packages, the results will probably just keep getting worse. I mean, not every defense is nearly as tough as the 49ers. We're talking like, the high level ambitions that a team like the Eagles have at this point. If they want to beat the kind of defenses that they should and need to be able to beat to get to where they want to go, they're not at that point right now, and they have to change something to get there, or they just won't.
Yeah, so I'm concerned about that, and you're going into a hostile environment, and it's a big like playmaking type of pass defense that Dallas has. Like this could, I feel like this might get ugly for the Eagles. Like I don't feel as strongly about it as I did about the 49ers beating up on them last week, but I think we might have the panic meter out for the Eagles this
And they
time
can't
next
play
week,
from
and then
behind
we'll
that
have
well,
to even though they're throwing too much.
Right, yeah, they throw too much, which gets them behind, and then it's like there should have been some kind of insight in the fact that Hurts was always at his best when the Eagles control the game and have favorable downs and distances, have favorable field positions, have favorable time of possession details, and you can throw the ball immediately in a game and air it out every time, but if your passes don't land, you're hanging your defense out to dry, and then your defense can no longer bail you out at all in the second half. And all that much more slack falls on this guy who never should have been throwing the ball more than about 30 times a game to begin with. If you want to make Jalen Hurts a 40 pass attempts quarterback, I don't know. You're going to need like another A.J. Brown, basically. Like you're going to need to give him a third rep of a route runner with such a decisive advantage, similar to the first two reps, that it scales up in a way that is sustainable. And right now we're just seeing like, nope, you don't have it.
Nope, you don't. And I don't think getting Dallas Goedert back in the mix necessarily fixes.
It should help a
things
little,
either.
though. I will say that Goddard is a beast, so he should help. Yeah.
And then on the Dallas side, I've so long been a Dallas skeptic under McCarthy. I think I'm behind.
I mean, they almost lost to the Seahawks. Not that they almost
did.
They let it be a lot closer than specifically they can't be giving up pass plays like that. I know Deron Bland is not going to give up 190 yards or whatever every game. In a way, they kind of like they got his struggles out of the way harmlessly, probably, but they can't be doing that kind of stuff, obviously. And the Eagles, I don't mean to make the Eagles sound like they're done. If the Dallas defense screws around basically like they did against the Seahawks, they're losing the game. But I also don't expect them to screw up quite that much. And Dak is rolling. The Eagles, they are putting too much on two aging corners, and there's not enough bridging the gap that they leave. And CeeDee Lamb, to Dallas's credit, Mike McCarthy, I guess, is credit. They have moved around Lamb a lot since that unnecessary early season struggles. And it's like, yeah, when you use him like this, no one's stopping him. It's not happening. And if no one's stopping Lamb, Dak isn't having nearly as many inconsistencies because Lamb is always rolling. And I think, knock on wood, that's kind of the point they've gotten themselves to finally.
But with the Eagles corner personnel, I don't know, maybe this is just like a stupid Georgia question, but how bad does Keely Ringo have to be to not get on the field at all?
He could be pretty bad. I think his struggles or his lack of playing time are also informed by a lack of versatility. Like they would never ever put Ringo in the slot for even like a second. And on the outside, he's kind of just like a cover 3 bumper corner kind of guy. Like he can only defend that sideline and only in a straight line. And if you take him off of that track, he kind of just unravels. So yeah, he's probably, if he's anything, I think he's just like a cover 3 kind of corner who probably needs to play on a defense that with like a crazy pass rush.
Like he did at Georgia.
Yeah.
Either way, I think the Cowboys win in fairly loud fashion here. Maybe I'm being overreactionary about the Eagles, but I was concerned about them going into last week, and it went about as I expected. I think the Cowboys hang some points here, make a statement, and all of a sudden people are going ballistic on Twitter because there's an overly large representation of Philly people on Twitter. Monday Night Doubleheader, let's run through these. Titans-Dolphins, 13-point favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the Titans cover because they run well. I could see them running pretty well on the Dolphins, but and I am a little tiny bit worried about the Titans defense giving the Dolphins offense some trouble. Like I think you specifically want to get downfield against the Titans, and sometimes the Dolphins get downfield by going sideways first. I worry a little bit about that, but yeah, I think it's safe to say Levis is kind of a goofball. That's not a terribly shocking outcome. And the Dolphins, I don't know. I love Mike McDaniel. I'm not gonna look for reasons to worry too much about him.
No, he's the man. I love that guy. I'm like jealous that the Dolphins have him for as long as he's interested in being there, and he seems to fit the Miami vibe extremely well. So yeah, I think the Dolphins get this one done. Whether it's by covering the spread, I'm not as strong on that one.
Right.
We can certainly see them doing that. I was dubious on them against Washington last week. I was like, that's a lot of points on the road, and then I looked really stupid. So the Dolphins can always do that. But then you can also have games, like the Raiders game, where it was a little bit closer, even though it was at home, than you would have expected. The Titans are a tough team. Vrabel's a tough guy, and they don't have a whole lot of pieces. So if the Dolphins start hot, like it's over for the Titans. But if they can, be within a field goal or a touchdown through after the first quarter, I think we're in for what ends up being a fairly interesting game.
Yeah, the Titans definitely need to pull down the Dolphins into the mud, but they are pretty good at that by now.
They are. And then let's round it out. Packers-Giants. Packers, kind of the darlings of the NFL right now after
the red hot John.
They are. They've won 3 games in a row. Jordan Love looks like he's a guy. I mean, it stunk that Christian Watson hurt his hamstring late in that game on Sunday night, but they've got interesting depth at the receiver spots. I mean, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, like that's all well and good. Tucker Kraft maybe coming into his own a little bit. Mm-hmm.
I even think that Ben Sims guy might be pretty good. Their third tight end. He was a Baylor tight end. Baylor tight end, and he went undrafted, but he had really good workout numbers, and he was, totally reasonably productive. So, but yeah, they got players on offense, and I still am not totally sold on Love. But one thing I'll have to say is I found his Chiefs game a lot more impressive than the Lions game or the one before that. Like I thought, the Chiefs are too good of a defense that I can't brush it aside the way I can with the Lions, because I've thought the Lions corners were kind of bums pretty much all year, at least downfield. I don't think they can really cover. In other words, the Chiefs can cover, and Love did great anyway. So I am going from mostly pessimistic to cautiously optimistic, but I don't know. I feel like some quarterbacks have had similar trajectories as him, and it still has turned out either way. Like they turned out really good, or they still crash back down to earth. So fingers crossed that it's the first one and not the second.
Right. And as it pertains to this matchup, going to New York to play on that cursed turf, hoping for no injuries on that front on Monday night. But the Giants are coming off the bye. Is there anything to look for as far as maybe the Giants being able to stifle this suddenly rolling Packers offense?
Yeah. So we're definitely finding out whatever the limit is of Brian Daboll's coaching, like his ability to elevate Tommy DeVito. Like gets the bye week, gets time to work with DeVito on this stuff. But we're also going into the 4th or 5th game with DeVito, and I'm sorry, I know he's done better than I thought he would. I'll give him that. Sure. But the other thing is, I underestimated how bad Daniel Jones was to make that offense look so hopeless that like going to DeVito in week 10 or whatever was what allowed Dable to start cooking up big plays like he did in 2022, I should say. So Dable with the time to work, it means DeVito might be better than usual. And I don't know what to make of the Packers defense exactly. They're so weird to me. Jair Alexander, if he gets healthy, that could change things a little bit. Gary is certainly a monster. Kenny Clark's probably a monster too. I just can't tell if they have anything else. And I can't tell if I need to worry about Barry more specifically, their defensive coordinator, getting totally game plan pantsed by Dable. Cause I kind of do expect that. So it's like, the best way I can see this going for the Packers defense is Darius Slayton's running wide open downfield, and Tommy DeVito like inexplicably does like a punt throw to like just like an other part of the field. Like that's the best way I can see it going for them. I can't really see the Packers just like being on the hunt on defense. It just doesn't seem possible. So I don't know how the Giants do it exactly. Saquon aside, I don't know how the Giants do it exactly. But the Dable versus Barry factor, I I get surprisingly paranoid about the Packers defense the more I think about it.
Yeah, like I felt more comfortable saying that the Packers would cover last week against the Chiefs as 6-point dogs than I do them covering as 6-point favorites here.
Dude, 2 weeks ago, if you had told me, like, will you pick Packers to cover against Tommy DeVito, I'd have said, like, yes, I don't care what the spread is.
Yeah, I don't
matter.
But
now, me too. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I can do 6 points.
Oh man. Oh, you're asking a lot, dude. Oh man. So I don't know. Should be an interesting game. It's I don't know if it's cool or I would have staggered the start times personally, but it is kind of nice that you get 2 games on Monday night starting at the same time, and you can kind of pick and choose whichever game is better. You just end up focusing on and leave the other one by the wayside. Yes.
Actually, it's bad. Because now I have to write 2 Monday Night Football DFS preview articles, which is
thanks a lot, Roger.
Travesty. Yeah,
that's ridiculous. I do feel bad for that, but beyond that, I do feel good about how this podcast went. That was a great breakdown of Week 14. Good luck to everybody as we get ready for the fantasy playoffs. So if you're right on that border, hopefully we were able to give you some actionable, useful advice. Big thanks to our sponsors over at Circa, over at OddsR, and over at Splash Sports, and of course, over at the Blue Wire Network. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie, and I'm stalling. Just kidding. Thanks for listening.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/